You're listening to Real Crime, the Movie Sleuth podcast.
All right, first off, Liam, only I may dance to the theme music.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So.
I gotta check my privilege. I get it.
No, I just hope somebody catches at the Simpsons quote, but...
Yeah, of course.
So,
you cannot dance if you want to.
So as you guys can see, Chris has been replaced. Just this episode, though. He'll be back next week.
It's true.
Possibly.
He is just standing in front of the live stream, though.
It's true. Yeah, he tragically injured himself.
Yes.
Yeah.
He pulled his groin doing squats.
Yeah, he was trying to. Well, we're gonna keep it on the down
trying
low.
To
what he
get
was
that
trying
booty
to do.
popping for the end of summer.
He wants that summer bod, and well.
But no, he'll be back next week.
Yeah.
And he's still running stuff behind the scenes over there. So, so I'm gonna host it, and I might suck because I've only ever done one other one. And so we have Liam.
Hi.
Mara.
Hello.
Chris.
Hey.
And this is episode 122, and this episode we're going to be discussing Quentin Tarantino's 9th film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
That's true. There's going to be a lot of feet.
Yeah. We're actually going to be barefoot for the entire podcast.
See,
we're going to take our shoes off later.
The camera's in the perfect position because I can have it on the whole time.
I'm wearing flip-flops. I can easily just kick mine off.
I have to get my feet super dirty.
We should have did it barefoot. That would have been funny, though. I wish I would have thought of it before we started.
I mean, it's not too late.
It's not too late.
All right, so first off, we're going to give a shout-out to our sponsors, which is projectorscreen.com. Matador Martial Arts, and the Flint Institute of Arts. Those are our 3 sponsors, and thanks for sponsoring us. We appreciate your support.
Yeah.
Now we're going to shift over to the news. And the first piece we have is the release of Dune has been pushed back a month, most likely to avoid competing with other big-budget, big-name films coming out.
Well, it's also the Star Wars slot, and Aquaman, which was a performer for Warner Brothers, did really well. It made $1 billion. And they're looking at Dune with franchise potential. Like, they already greenlit a series that's the Sisterhood of Dune that's going to be on the HBO streaming thing, I think.
Yeah, and they've said for sure that they are making the second half of the first novel.
So it's
at least
a
2
strategic
films in the series.
I mean, if we're going to have a franchise, I totally want it to be Dune, because there's so much good Dune material. There's also bad Dune material, but they won't get to the bad stuff till later if this pans out. So, but
I mean, part of me is still concerned that they are really banking on mainstream audiences being real into a super in-depth story about trade disputes and the mixing of religion and politics and all this pretty non-blockbustery stuff.
You mean like how they were into Blade Runner 2049? They really like that.
That's exactly what concerns me. I mean, there's more potential to do blockbustery stuff with Dune because there are fights and sandworms and stuff, but at its core, that is that first book is very much about trade disputes and religion. So
I think it's more audience friendly.
I'm really really excited for it, but I just feel like is the average movie-going public as geeky and patient as I am?
Please.
Next piece of news is Event Horizon series is in development for Amazon streaming. It's going to be helmed by Adam Wingard. What do you guys think of that?
I think it'll be cool. Event Horizon is one of those movies that's close to being great for me, and then there's just kind of stuff where I'm like, so maybe this show will expand on it and do something more with it. Yeah. And I like Adam Wingard. I wasn't crazy about his Death Note, but You're Next and The Guest rule, so I'm down for whatever he does.
Yeah, I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt that with Death Note he was just it was a case of the wrong director being picked for that project.
Very wrong.
I mean, everybody has that one misstep.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of Dune.
Yeah.
sorry, David. But yeah, I'm excited about that. And also, I wrote about this on Facebook, how several years ago, a year after the Blu-ray of Event Horizon came out, Paul W.S. Anderson said he found his work print of his fabled mythical director's cut, but Paramount said, no, we just did a Blu-ray, we're not interested in restoring that and doing another one. So I'm hoping that this will light a fire
Ignite
under
some interest.
either
Some
Paramount
leverage.
or Paramount's finally started licensing to Scream Factory.
I was gonna say that sounds like a Scream Factory super
Yeah.
deluxe edition.
Oh yeah,
That's right in their territory.
yeah. I mean, it would be the same kind of deal as their Exorcist 3 director's cut,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that only exists on VHS. So it would be another HD VHS combo, but he says that it's a much better cut of the movie with a lot more story and whatnot, and is also just gory as hell, apparently.
Yeah.
So that would be fun to see if the series
Alright.
brought that forth.
Let's see. Next, we got Hobbs and Shaw comes in at number 1, but it grossed lower than expected. I didn't see that because honestly,
Yeah.
I've seen like 3 Fast and Furious movies and I thought they were all stupid,
Yeah.
and then they just look like they get more stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the charm, though, for
Yeah.
me. If
I
you're
like
hammered
stupid
and-
stuff, but
Yeah, they're
I don't
they're
know.
very. I don't know. It's not the same without Vin Diesel going family. It's about family. That's the charm. That's the charm of it. Like I don't like. Well, The Rock and Jason Statham, they seem like fun dudes,
Yeah.
but I'm like, eh.
Did you see like on the internet somebody was spilling the beans that they all have these clauses in their contracts to where they can't lose a certain amount of fights and stuff?
That's so silly to me. That's
Yeah.
so ridiculous. Part of the fun of watching an action movie is you see the hero get his
Yeah.
or her ass kicked. And then in the third act, it's like, oh, yeah, it's triumphant. It'd be like if Rocky just won every fight.
Yeah, I mean,
It's not a movie.
Well,
Yeah.
but is it that they can't lose any, or that they can only lose X number of
they
fights?
can only use X numbers or be one. One of them had something like they can only be punched this many times in a movie, and like they can only lose one movie, and then the other one they have to. I was like, what?
It's so specific.
It was really specific.
It's like, you
really
cannot
weird.
punch me in the groin.
I just thought
No
that was
takesies,
silly.
backsies.
All right, and the last one we have is Andy Serkis. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Andy Serkis.
Andy Serkis will direct Venom 2. Is it really called Venom 2 Electric Boogaloo? Or did you
It's-
just type that on there?
No, that's the title. Is Venom 2 Electric
I
Boogaloo.
was
That would
hoping
be
that's for real.
amazing.
Venom has to help rebuild the youth center.
Oh my god.
There's
You know,
a dance off
I
between him
bought
and
Venom
Carnage.
for like $4 maybe a couple weeks ago, and I still haven't watched it yet.
It's
but
pretty
I feel like it's going to be worth $4.
It's fun because Tom Hardy kind of channels Jim Carrey.
That
In that
sounds
performance.
weird as hell.
It's as weird. He's like the only person in that movie who's like fully committed to being in a Venom movie, and everyone else is like trying to be like
Yeah.
really serious and up the material.
Well, didn't they say like he played it like they thought there was going to be like kind of like a buddy comedy thing, and
Yeah.
then they just cut all the stuff out that made it that way?
Yeah,
or
it's
something?
kind of like Upgrade, but not good.
Yeah, it's like upgrade. It's
That
got
should go on the cover. Kind of like Upgrade, but not good. The movie
right.
sleuth.
so. Let's see what we got next. Oh, new releases. Yeah, I'm reading off the thing. And
Yeah,
anybody
that's
that's mad
fine.
about it can stay mad.
Yeah,
Dora and the Lost City of Gold, which Chris reviewed, and he said it was good. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. I believe Andrea is going to be reviewing that. Wasn't the screening tonight? Yeah. Tomorrow night?
tomorrow.
All right. Brian Banks was a movie I'd never heard of till like right before this podcast started.
Yeah.
That's coming out. I don't know who's reviewing that. Somebody, I'm sure. And that brings us to everyone's suggested viewings. We'll start with you, Liam. And we'll
Oh
just
yeah,
go
all
say.
right. This week
Is it Dust Devil?
I was so close to saying Dust Devil, just to throw everyone for a loop. No, I was gonna say because I was in a Tarantino mood. I finally got around to watching Jackie Brown.
Oh, for the first time?
For the first time, because everyone's like, you gotta watch it. And I'm like, all right, I'll watch it. And it's wonderful. I loved it. I love Pam Grier. I love Robert Forster, and Robert De Niro was great in it. I wish he did more Tarantino stuff.
Right, I
I
know.
feel like he would be really
Perfect.
like putty in Tarantino's hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it or if you need to rewatch it, you should watch it. It's a very wonderful film and very mature for Tarantino.
I would say
Yeah.
it's like kind of closest to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood,
I
like kind of
agree.
like pacing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
low-key.
kind of a hangout movie.
Yeah.
Both of them are hangout films.
I wanted to go back and watch Jackie Brown actually right after we watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It made me think of it in that way.
Yeah, so watch Jackie Brown.
Yes.
All right, cool. Maya?
Okay. I just recently got Amazon Prime again. I haven't had it in a while, and I just got it, and I'm just discovering all these weird little gems and pockets in Amazon Prime, and I just realized the other night that Unsolved Mysteries is on Prime, and I've been like obsessively watching it. Like I cannot stop. I love it.
That used to be the jam when I was a kid, though, because it was just always on no matter what time of the day it was. There was like a rerun of it on somewhere.
I loved it as a kid too, and I don't know, forgot about it for years and just started watching it, and I'm like back in it. And they'd have the updates now, so at the end, if the mystery's solved, they tell you the guy's in jail or he died or whatever, and so that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, dude, Amazon Prime is amazing for obscure
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
and old TV shows.
They have a lot of really good B horror.
Yes,
on
they
Amazon.
They do.
They do.
Like a very robust. Like I watch Amazon Prime way more than I watch Netflix. Like they beat out Netflix in my opinion. If you like weird movies or they have a lot of old Asian films on there too.
Yeah.
And most of the time it's actually a pretty okay like transfer. Like sometimes it's like a VHS transfer you can tell, but most of the time it looks pretty good too.
Yeah, Amazon Prime's great. And just as a little added-in suggested viewing that I watched actually probably years ago on Amazon Prime, but I don't know if it's still on there. I hope it is. It's a reenactment of a recording of a dinner party between Mae West and Betty Davis by one of their like butlers at the time or houseboys or whatever, and it's pretty amazing.
And that's just like such a random thing.
Yeah.
And then Amazon Prime has it.
Yeah.
They just have it.
And that's why I like Prime.
Yeah.
Because of that.
That's really interesting.
If you just like search, I think like Mae West, I think that's what happened. I searched her or Betty Davis looking for either one of their movies, and I was
Yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised. I didn't find any movie I wanted to watch, but I was pleasantly surprised by that.
Well, awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
Chris, what's your recommendation for this evening?
Mine.
I'm doing my NPR voice.
Yeah, you're listening to Car Talk on NPO.
My recommendation, even though Michelle spoiled it, even though we don't do that here,
Yeah,
is
this is spoil free.
I mean, well,
Fuck.
tonight's now we're gonna
Yeah.
spoil the hell out of this Tarantino movie.
Yeah.
My recommendation is Dust Devil, which I had meant to see for years and then finally just watched now that it got a Blu-ray in Germany. It's the second film by Richard Stanley, the director of Hardware. It's from 1992. One of those many famous cases that got horribly, horribly meddled with and re-edited by Miramax because they distributed it in the U.S.
Yeah.
The director's cut is out on Blu in Germany now. It's really, really good. This like really moody, ethereal, very strange, surreal kind of dreamscape horror movie about sort of a serial killer in small desert communities in Namibia who is actually the incarnation of this like sort of desert spirit, and it's really cool. And he's said in interviews that it's very much like sort of a cocktail of influences of like Alejandro Jodorowsky and spaghetti westerns and Lovecraft, and it's just like a mix of very, very cool stuff. And it's one that I would highly recommend that
That sounds
check out.
awesome.
Yeah. it's
Yeah.
amazing.
And I'm not surprised it was Miramax that butchered it.
Yeah.
Because they
Yep.
butcher everything.
Harvey Scissorhands.
Yeah.
Yep, they cut it by like 20 minutes.
Jeez.
Yeah.
And we're
And-
still feeling the repercussions of Miramax meddling with stuff because they own
Yeah.
rights to stuff still. And
Oh yeah.
then,
Well, like that's why if you're region free, get this German Blu-ray because it is never gonna come out in the U.S. Because Lionsgate owns the Miramax library.
Yeah.
Lionsgate does not license because they
Nope.
are also terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of Miramax, I have a non-recommendation. Yesterday night, I finally watched Phantoms because I was real curious if it was as bad as its reputation suggests, and or if Affleck actually is the bomb in Phantoms.
yeah.
The movie's bad.
No.
It's real,
I've never
real
seen
bad. You can tell it was shot to be much longer because, like, what you hear of the script is fine.
Yeah.
It's based on a novel that's pretty good. It's just like horribly paced to the point of being incoherent, and it just like cuts to a creepy thing that there should be a build up to.
Yeah.
There's no understanding of pacing. It's also by the director of Halloween 6, everybody's second
favorite
least
one.
favorite Halloween. But yeah, don't actually watch Phantoms. Ben Affleck, however, was not bad.
He
Wouldn't
just
say he
kinda
was the
gets
bomb at
roped
Phantoms.
in the bad stuff, I feel like.
I feel for young Batfleck.
Yeah, I mean he's way too young for this character. He's playing like a cheap hopper, kind of
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
old, like 30, like late 30 something, early 40 something cop who's been through some shit, and he's chasing Amy era Ben Affleck. Yeah.
It's like, I'm a quap.
Yeah. So probably don't watch
I'm the
Phantoms.
sheriff of this town.
All right. Well, mine. I actually just watched mine today. It's an old Hong Kong horror comedy hybrid called Mr. Vampire.
Nice.
I love these wacky 80s. Like this is like a whole subgenre of movies. It's wacky 1980s Hong Kong like horror comedy blends. They make so many of these. Like Mr. Vampire, there's like 5 or 6 of them I think in the series. But I've been going on Diablo Lake DVD, and they've been listing all these Hong Kong imports, and I'm like, oh, I can finally get these on Blu-ray, you know, because Fortune Star, as a lot of people know, like a lot of their stuff's out of print, and like you know, a DVD will be like $100 for like some old Hong Kong movie or something. So it's a lot easier just to import region-free Hong Kong Blu-rays, which is what I've been doing. But it's great. It's just like I don't know if a lot of people are familiar with the Chinese hopping vampire. Like
Absolutely.
yeah, they just dude, is the funniest thing. Like they're vampires, they dress like in traditional Chinese garb, and they have white faces, and they hop like with their arms out like this. They hop like this, and that's the only way they move is by hopping. And
Because they got rigor mortis.
yeah,
They're dead.
it's supposed to be. I don't know if it's supposed to be scary, but it's not. It's like adorable. Because and this movie has like 7 or 8 of them at a time, and they're just all hopping, coming after everybody. Oh, and they you can smell your breath, and that's how they find you. So a lot of times the characters are like, holding their breath, trying to like get out of the way of and they have a weapon where they like blow their breath into this big long tube, so it sends their breath across the room. So like the vampires will hop over there. Dude, it's the silliest shit I've ever seen in my life. It's so hilariously done, and on top of it, like there's like these awesome practical effects because it's the 80s, so that's what they use. And I can't remember the director off the top of my head, but he works with Jackie Chan a lot, and like the actual like stunts and kung fu stuff is amazing in it. So like they're kung fu fighting hopping vampires, but it's like amazing. They're like doing backflips and running up the wall and stuff, and like doing like that, like wire work, and they're absolutely fun. So like if you are looking for a new genre of things to get into, 1980s Hong Kong horror hybrids, and like look into hopping vampires. They're hilarious. They're really
That sounds really
Yeah.
fun.
yeah,
it
it was
does.
really
That sounds
fun.
like my jam.
Yeah, that was one that Thomas Video had on VHS, and I always kind of meant to check it out.
Yeah,
And it's one that I've regretted not buying it when they closed.
I've wanted to see it for like decades, and you might want to look on Amazon Prime. It might be on there.
Oh,
They have a
nice.
lot of weird
Yeah.
old Asian films on there. I'm surprised honestly by how robust their selection is for old Hong Kong films.
That's cool. I'm trying to look up who directed that, but the internet. Oh, Ricky Lau.
Yes, Ricky
directed
Lau.
that.
Yeah, and he's like a protege or like a partner type of thing with Jackie Chan. So you see a lot of like he's really good with the physical humor in it as well.
cool.
There's a lot of like slapstick stuff, and there's also like magic wizard fights and shit in it, like black magic. Like the main guy is like a priest basically, and he can he controls the hopping vampires with a bell. He rings the bell, and then they come hopping, and then he points where he wants them to go. This dude's fucking. It's funny. All right, so we are at our topic, which is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which has been a divisive movie,
Yeah.
oddly, in my opinion, because I saw it a little early, like just a couple of days early at a screening. And I was like, oh, yeah, that was pretty good. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. And then, like, a week later, everybody's like, Quentin Tarantino is like Hitler, basically. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
whoa, do we all see the same film? Like, what the heck,
Right.
man? Like, they were just absolutely just dragging this dude, like,
Yeah.
through the mud.
I just want to say I'm so grateful that there's a movie that has like generated that kind of discussion.
Yeah.
That's not like a big comic book movie or something like that. It's
Yeah.
really refreshing to see
point.
people like talking about this and like going to see it. Like I've went to the last couple shows I've seen it like twice, 2 or 3 times now, because I have a problem. I can't stop watching this movie, but it's been nearly sold out. So it's nice to have a cultural dialogue, even if some of it is kind of bonkers.
You know, and I was just thinking, like, you know, Quentin Tarantino and controversy is not new.
No.
Because I remember back in the 90s when Pulp Fiction came out, and there was all those parental groups that were against it, and there's like that "I'm shutting your butt down" interview.
I love that interview
I know.
so much.
I think about that all the time.
Yeah.
I love watching Tarantino get interviewed.
'Cause
It was crazy.
And it was
shit.
more because of the violence, I think, that people were offended back then. Because
I think language I know was a
Yeah.
big thing too.
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, this isn't new. I guess it's just more intense now because of the internet.
Well, I think it's in the climate. Everyone now, like, there's wider access, so we get to hear like different voices
Yeah.
and different takes on it. That, like, in the '90s, you probably just didn't hear a lot.
Which is a good
True.
thing, by the way.
Yeah.
It's a good thing that the critique is more diverse.
Yes.
Yeah, I've
So I
heard
don't want
peop-
anybody to think that we're against that.
No.
Yeah,
And I also think that people are a lot more sensitive to different ideologies in movies than we were, 20, 30 years ago, too. And I mean, things people say I think are valid. It's just,
yeah.
I just feel like some of the criticism, not all of it, but some of it is a little myopic, in my opinion. Like, I saw a Times article today where they counted everybody's dialogue, and
saw that,
they
too.
were like, women had less lines. And I just feel like that's like ignoring the forest for the trees. Like, you're ignoring the context of the lines and the context of the character. And I just feel like if you just boil everything down to like this mathematical equation,
Yeah.
like show every script going to have an equal amount of lines by every character, and it has to be 100% balanced, like your Thanos or something.
Right.
Like, a script. Like, it just seems I don't know. It just
Movies
seems like
aren't-
a ridiculous way to quantify whether a movie is good or not.
Movies aren't
Yeah.
like math. They're
I
they're
totally-
art.
Yeah.
You have
Right.
to you respond to things. There isn't like people say, "Oh, there's a formula to writing movies." There isn't. It's designed to provoke and make you feel things and think about things. It's not just, "Oh, well, we have a woman and another woman, and they have to say about 42 lines to each other, and we got to make sure they're a diverse group of people." It's movies are about story.
I mean, that's
or they're
not
about how you feel.
I understand wanting more diversity, and I'm 100% for that. And I love having strong female characters and well written, well rounded characters of agency. Female characters is what I'm talking about specifically. But I feel like
Absolutely.
it has to be more organic than you just going in. Because if a director's going into movie thinking I have to write this many lines for a female character, that's not organic creation.
It just stifles creativity.
Yeah.
And there's also like artistic context to Sharon Tate's character that she does not talk for her first much of being in that movie, but there is kind of like a thematic reason
There's a
for that.
purpose.
And I liked what they did with her character that I'm sure we'll get into more
Yeah,
later, but I thought
I-
it paid off really well
I have
in
a
her
lot of
one
really
really great scene in the
Good
middle.
points. I really like what they did with Sharon in this. That is probably one of my favorite aspects of it.
And to just say something about the New York Times article, I mean, you can take a movie and boil it down to how many lines a female character has. It doesn't mean that it's actually a positive portrayal or not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It doesn't. And I think there's a lot more to acting than just dialogue.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And a
nonverbal
lot more
acting
to,
is huge.
to storytelling too.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a thing to kind of say to drum up, I think, an argument and a discussion. But I don't really think it's, in my opinion, I don't think it's really like a valid way to say that the movie is unfair to women.
Right. Especially, I mean, I don't know. Before the movie came out, really the only thing I remember being controversial was Sharon Tate had not a lot of lines, I heard, and the whole Quentin Tarantino I reject your hypothesis thing,
Yeah.
which, for one thing, like Quentin Tarantino, any interview I've ever seen him in, he's always really hyped up in it. And
Yeah.
he's like already,
Yes.
and he's pretty defensive.
Right.
He's already on the defense. That's just the kind of the way he is in
Yeah.
interviews. So I was like 0% surprised. That's what he said. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's a Quentin Tarantino interview.
Yeah, I'm shocked that people were like, I can't believe he said that. I'm
I'm
like,
like,
he
have you
literally
seen
told the
him
guy
ever?
to like, I'm shutting your butt down. Make no mistake, this is promotion for my movie.
Yeah.
Like I could totally just see him going, I reject your hypothesis.
Yeah, that's just how he is.
Well, you
That's
know,
how it is.
I don't think he has to answer. I don't think artists ever have to answer for what they do. And
Yeah.
I mean, I forgot the actual question that he was asked. Like, how could you poorly use an actress or something like that? It was something like that.
Yeah.
Which,
Well, it was about
Why'd
the
you
amount
waste
of
her or
lines of
something
Sharon
like that?
Tate in it.
yeah, and it's kind of like sucky of that interviewer personally, because it's kind of like making him he's making him agree that like he messed up his movie,
Yeah.
and he's like, no.
Well, it's a loaded question
Yeah.
either way, because then
Yeah.
if he says, yeah, maybe I could have, you got him to admit that he fucked up on his
Exactly,
movie.
Yeah.
exactly.
And that, like, what do you think they're gonna say if you ask someone like that? That
Yeah.
question and that.
And a lot of people were pre-mad about the movie before even seeing it, which I see
Yeah.
quite a bit. I'll see people sharing
Yeah.
negative articles about a movie they haven't seen.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have people argue with me about my opinion on a movie I have seen and they haven't,
Yeah.
which is
That's-
like one of my favorite things ever because
Yeah.
it's stupid.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they're like, "Well, you're wrong because of this article," and I'm like, "You haven't even seen it. I like actually legit saw the movie."
Yeah,
How-
people pre-making up their mind that a movie is going to be terrible before
Yeah.
it's out is a really frustrating
Yeah,
thing.
and the sad thing is, it's all just opinion anyway. It's,
Yeah.
So
like nobody's opinion is any more important than anybody else's
Right.
opinion.
Absolutely.
So
Except mine.
yes.
yeah, right.
All right, so let's talk about the actual movie.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think?
The first thing I want to talk about is I want to talk about the feeling. This is kind of a different movie than what Quentin Tarantino has done. The last couple movies he's done have been, like wide spanning westerns and chamber pieces.
Mm-hmm.
This movie's kind of a hangout film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a hangout period piece but it's also kind of like what I'd call a bromantic comedy.
Yeah.
You should
because
Totally.
you should like you should patent that as well, I was trying to say. So you get like paid every time somebody says bromantic comedy.
that's gonna be my what is it, mystery pixie manic dream girl.
Yeah.
But I was struck by the friendships in this movie and just by the atmosphere. Right from the first frame you see the Manson family followers, there's this kind of sense of dread. Mm-hmm. If you know the history and the way he holds on it and frames things, there's like it's drawn out, like you're like, what's gonna happen?
Yeah. I'm going to stop you for 1 second. Just so anybody's listening, we're going to go into heavy spoiler territory on this movie. So if you haven't seen it, you should probably stop listening.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you care about spoilers.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Oh no, that's fine. I think what this movie does really well is it plays with your expectations, and there's
Yeah.
like a tension that kind of just runs through it. It feels like the end of an era.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it was shot on film is not lost on a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think that the time that it takes place in too, I mean, not only in the fact that it's framed by the Manson murders, but the time, 1969 in Hollywood, I mean, it's kind of it's almost like relevant to today, like kind of paralleling, like at that point, like Best Picture that year was Midnight Cowboy. In 1967, Bonnie and Clyde came out, and Graduate came out, and those movies like really, really changed what people expected out of movies at that point. They were very different than what had come out previously. And I think we're kind of going through something like that right now, where when Tarantino started out with Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction and in the 90s, cinema, the Hollywood movie industry was like so different than it is now. And the types of movies that get made, the types of movies that people want to go see, so different.
Yeah.
And it was cool to kind of see that parallel. And I also enjoy the fact that we have Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio, who are two kind of like aging like sex symbols who are also kind of like going through this, era of kind of a switch from in their careers. I mean, I think both of them kind of have been for probably the past decade.
Yeah.
But even more so
Yeah.
now they're getting older. And even, there's this, I love the scene where he's with the little girl.
Yeah.
And
She was
Yeah.
great.
and he's telling her about the book and he breaks down, and it's like, I could see like, maybe like Leo feels that way, himself, like, because he's not the cute kid anymore,
I can even extend that further. I think it's Tarantino feeling that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
definitely.
I mean, he's went
100%.
from the underdog and the countercultural indie guy to being an institution. Like people say, a Tarantino film, you know exactly what that is.
Yeah.
And now he's brushing up against him becoming irrelevant, maybe.
Yeah, he's
Right.
like
Yeah.
the Rick Dalton character.
Yeah,
of course.
There's
Yeah.
a reason they picked him to be a Western actor.
Yeah.
Because you're looking at that era and the actors who were popular in '69. It was like the kind of shaggy, long-haired, like guys, I can't remember the names, but like Dennis Hopper.
Like
Yeah.
Dennis
Right.
Hopper, Peter
Uh-huh.
Fonda.
Yeah.
Like that kind of era of actor, and the folks like Cliff Booth and Rick Dalton are kind of left out. They're just doing bit parts on TV. Yeah,
Yeah, I thought it balanced those themes very well with like the change in Hollywood and the end of an era and the midlife crisis arc especially. That was definitely the best part of the movie.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I liked, like you said about it being a hangout film, Liam. It's like that. I really liked that vibe to it. It reminded me a lot of a Robert Altman movie,
Yeah.
like Nashville or one of those, where it's just like a bunch of just like little slices of life drifting around each other.
It was almost like episodic, and I could see it
Yeah.
being kind of like split into little vignettes and
yeah.
like that. And I think the fact that it really didn't have much of a plot and that it was so long, that helped it like not be as boring
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, I really liked like the first 2 hours especially. I really liked that stuff. I thought it did that very well. I did not like the movie as much as the three of you, I think,
Yeah.
just because
Which is good because now we
Yeah.
have a
Fine.
good,
there are
well-balanced
things about
combo.
it that kind of fell apart for me, and I felt like it wound up having some wasted potential,
Yeah.
and we'll get to that stuff. But that was like the first two acts, especially. It really nailed the like old school Hollywood. Like it felt like a 70s Altman film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I like
what
that
it
he
did,
made
yeah.
I like that he made more of a period piece instead of like usually he takes a genre like say blaxploitation like with Django Unchained or spaghetti western or Hong Kong
Or a war picture, even.
war picture. He kind of takes a genre and tries to emulate the tropes of the genre
Yeah.
and make a film that's like it came out back then but it's modern. But in this film he actually played it straight pretty much except for the end because he's Quentin Tarantino, but for the first two acts he played it pretty straight and then having it as a period piece, and then he played around with the stuff with the little fake movie clips with
Yeah.
Rick Dalton's character. So like he
That
still
was
got to
really
do
cool.
that.
I
Yeah.
love that.
But he
That
didn't
was-
interrupt like the narrative with it. Like he kind of like just had like these little areas he could just have fun with because
Yeah.
he likes doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, he played a lot with structure, and the other thing that kind of popped out to me on the second time I saw it is that all the Manson family folks are played by like second generation Hollywood children. So you have like Harley
Oh.
Quinn Smith is in there. Margaret
thought I
Qualley,
saw her, yeah.
Margaret Qualley, who's Andy McDowell's kid. She's the one that Brad Pitt talks to. I think her name's like Flower Child.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Oh, is
Maya
that
Hawke.
Pussycat?
No, that's Margaret Qualley's Pussycat.
Oh.
And and Maya Hawke, who has a really fun moment at the end.
Yeah.
And there's
Dakota Fanning.
Dakota Fanning, who's
I didn't even realize that was her.
Wow. I didn't know she was in it. Who was she?
She was
Squeaky
Squeaky
Fromm.
Fromm. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like an interesting kind of meta thing going on
Mm-hmm.
where the hippies are actually played by a new generation of actors coming up, and they're also like the new generation in the film as well
Yeah.
of society.
yeah.
Yeah, and it seemed well, they were like it was pretty anti-hippie movie.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
I was talking with somebody, I don't know if it was you or somebody, I was talking about maybe, it was Don. I think some of the issue that people have with the movies is that they're conflating hippie with leftism. So they feel
Yeah.
like the movie is anti-leftism or anti-liberal when it's actually, I don't want to say that hippies and liberals are the same thing. I
think
feel like
they
they're
are.
not.
They're not.
They overlap in some things. I feel like just like progressive cultural, like countercultural, but
Yeah.
I feel like they
Yeah.
don't just. You can't just like one for one swap them out as like an allegory,
No,
I guess,
don't
or a
think
metaphor.
it's even really fair to say that the movie's anti-hippie. Like the characters
characters are.
who talk about
Right, yeah.
hippies being terrible are like the characters having the midlife crisis who are
Yeah.
afraid of the
Yeah.
change in culture. You know, like they're afraid of the counterculture. Like Rick Dalton is like John Wayne, who
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
at that point just sort of like a cultural joke who made a wildly out of touch right-wing Vietnam movie that everybody hated and
Yeah.
like just like, oh, like you're the past, you're a
Yeah.
dinosaur.
Right.
So it's natural that he would have that fear. And then like
Yeah.
the Manson family or Harley
Yeah.
and like it's
Yeah, they're
they're,
not.
they're the
not-
Manson, they're
not
their own
leftists.
Yeah.
they're their own problem altogether.
I've
Of
just
course.
seen that like
But
kind
they
of
were-
like floating around.
They
you
were
know?
right though to be scared of the hippies because those were the
sure.
ones
Yeah.
who were bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's just like, I don't know, like, it's just, I feel like it does, like I said, it just doesn't one-to-one transfer. But I've seen
No.
some people kind of being like, it's anti-hippie. And I'm like, well, because I guess they don't show good hippies, but like
Yeah.
Sharon Tate and them, aren't they kind of hippies?
Yeah, I would. I
Yeah, I
argue
guess so.
They're like rich or
They're
whatever.
hip,
Yeah.
kind of cool.
They're hip.
It's
Yeah.
But
you know, to
She's
take
hanging
these
out with the
characters
moms
at
and
their
the
own
papas,
words is like, you know, like you can't really trust the words that some of them are saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's not
Depiction is an endorsement.
like yeah, exactly
Right.
That's a thing that you have to say
Mm-hmm.
a lot now.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I guess I get that some people feel like because Rick Dalton and Cliff are so charismatic that you, and they're also pretty much the protagonists of the film, that you're kind of like almost roped into rooting for them because you're just following their journey, right? And you
Yeah.
don't want to see people fail. And that was actually another thing that was coming up a lot is people were uncomfortable with the ambiguity, the moral ambiguity of Cliff's character because
Yeah.
they play off him possibly murdering his wife as a joke,
Yeah,
which it's a dark humor. I thought it was kind of funny. I'm not
There's
gonna
even a
lie.
darker part to that like the actress who's playing that was like accused of manslaughter.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Are you serious? Wow.
Yeah, I think Rebecca Gayheart was the character, the actress who plays it.
I didn't know
Wow.
that.
Yeah,
What happened?
I can't remember for the life of me what happened,
Yeah.
but it had to have popped up into Quentin Tarantino's mind.
Yeah, he
that
notices
happened.
little things
Well,
like that.
Yeah, I don't, that bothered me for a different reason. And it was, I mean, I'm sure I'll talk more about this, but just like that that
You should
movie.
talk about it now.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, this movie, my big frustration with it in the last act is that it spends 2 hours setting up all these character arcs and all these themes and all these things that it like starts saying and then just drops them all and ends up really like just caring about like doing this other stuff altogether. And it's like that didn't feel like a throwaway joke. That felt like it was setting up a theme or like it was setting up what he was going to say about like sort of the way that we mythologize this era of like classic Hollywood, but
Yeah.
it still had all this awful stuff that we don't talk about, and the parallel with what's going on today, like you were saying, Mara, with like all that's been coming out about the dark side of Hollywood and like all
Yeah.
this like people who we glamorize, but they do awful stuff that we willfully ignore, and it felt like it was going to say something about that, and that the circumstances are literally it's a Robert Wagner Natalie Wood situation
Yeah.
that like we know now that like a witness came forward and said, oh yeah, Robert Wagner let her die, and but like everybody
Yeah.
just ignored that for
Right,
decades because
yeah.
he was a charming dude.
Yeah.
So it's like it seems like it's gonna say all these really interesting things. It's like, okay, there's like worlds of themes that you could turn this into, but then nope, it's just a throwaway joke. And then, like, you know, the likable woman murderer is just gonna murder the hell out of some women at the end in a really, like, spectacularly violent way.
Yeah.
Which, again, I don't think that what he does at the ending, I don't think it means that Tarantino is a misogynist. I don't think that it's inherently
murders a man,
sexist.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it's weird in the sense of just like leaving these themes hanging
Yeah.
and not doing anything with them after for 2 hours being like, this is going to be about something. I have something to say here. And then like, JK guys, I don't actually have anything to say. It just seemed like a really wasted opportunity. And
I
like
felt like it was.
yeah.
I read it more as they were setting Cliff up to make the violence at the end more believable. Because I
Yeah,
feel
that's
like
what I
they
thought,
kind of
too.
set him up to be this laid back guy that has a dark streak right inside him.
Yeah.
Like if you fuck with him in the right kind of way, he will kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like-
well, with the Bruce Lee thing, that definitely set that up well.
Yeah.
They set that up in other ways, but like there's a difference between like I don't know how you would set up an anti-hero
Right.
and how you would set up a villain, and like shooting your wife to death in cold
Yeah.
blood and trying to like cover up the crime.
But we don't know
is
that he
definitely-
did, though. They
But
keep
it's
it
based on
ambiguous.
something that like was a
Yeah.
real thing that we now know the guy actually did it
Yeah.
after
I mean,
years
but
of
felt
ambiguity.
black
But
and
those
white.
things, like
What
the
was it?
trigger.
Nothing's
of the,
black
yeah.
and white. I mean,
Well, the
sometimes
trigger on
people
those things-
do villainous things,
Well, yeah,
and
but
then they
nothing's
do good
black.
things too.
Nothing's black and white. Yeah, all those things are fine, but it just strikes me as lazy screenwriting to not work with that, not work with the fact that nothing's black and white. Just like, oh, I'm just gonna throw this out here in just a real half-assed way, I don't know.
I don't know. I don't think it was a throwaway joke or
Yeah.
let like a hanger on or whatever. I think it was a good device to show the type of person that either he is or that people think he is.
Yeah, I thought it was for what he was.
I think it
Yeah.
Because
would
those
have been a
things-
good
yeah.
device if the writing had ever come back around to it, and if they had done anything else with it thematically. Like, I don't know. It just
Do you
like
think Cliff is a bad person or a good person?
I think he's a morally ambiguous person. I
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
fine. Like this just it made me think so much of American Horror Story, which has such a knack for like, oh, setting up great themes for like 14 hours and then bungling them all at the end and having none of those themes coalesce in a
Yeah.
way that is remotely worthwhile.
Yeah.
And like with the first season, how like Tate was he was a great character because he was morally ambiguous and was
Yeah.
all like shades of gray, and it was really, really interesting. And then at the last minute, they just like, nope, we're not going to do anything of note with this.
Yeah.
It made me think of that. Like, I like what you're saying, Mara, about like making him like a moral gray area character, where like if they'd done more with that, like show a little bit more, but like, yeah, there's ways in which he's a bad guy, but he's charismatic, and you're supposed to feel conflicted about how you feel about him. I just felt like it was a half-baked theme that he
Yeah.
could
I
have
think
done
they could
more
have
with.
leaned into if they were trying to make him more ambiguous, I guess, leaned into more of his violent side. I mean, they showcase it, but every time he's violent, it's kind of like
It makes sense.
it makes sense for him to be violent. Like they
He's-
slash his tires and they're not going to let him
Yeah.
go. You know, like
Yeah.
maybe he couldn't have beat the crap out of him, but obviously those people didn't have his best interest in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah, like that was justified. Like
Yeah.
every other moment when he's violent, he's still likable.
Yeah.
Except for that one moment. It's like a different kind of violence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like that's fine to have his
Yeah.
character be that, but like
Yeah.
just work with it. Do something else
Yeah.
with it. It just I don't know. For a movie that's almost 3 hours long, it was weird to me that something that important felt half explored.
I think Quentin Tarantino's violence often is gratuitous and leans more towards mean-spirited in general. Not all the time, but I feel like that's a thing he does quite a bit. And I feel like the end of this film leans more into mean-spirited violence. It's justified and it's cathartic.
Oh yeah, well
Yeah.
yeah,
But
they are
it's
the
still,
Manson family.
like,
so.
Yeah.
It's just, especially the way I think the way it's set up is really great though. Like the whole he's like starting to trip on like
Yeah.
the LSD and there's just this one maybe 5-minute period where you don't know what he's gonna do with it. You're like, is he gonna kill them? Like the whole movie you're thinking about the murder, right?
Yeah.
Which is
Which
the
is
whole
on- yeah.
yeah. And then there's just that one moment where, you know, Cliff's standing there and the guy's like, I'm the devil, and he's pointing the gun, and you're like, what's Quentin Tarantino
And he's like,
gonna
no,
do
it's
with
way
this?
dumb. And then Cliff says,
And then he
"No,
throws
it's way
the can,
dumber than that."
and then you know,
Which
once he
I-
throws the
yeah.
can, you know what Quentin Tarantino's gonna do at the
Oh
end.
yeah.
But I love that
whole-
little uncertain.
I
little
love
moment.
that whole section of and part of this movie. What I love is that it kind of demythologizes the Manson family. Charles Manson is basically irrelevant to the story.
Yeah.
He has a 5-second scene, and if you don't know who he is, it doesn't matter. But he's like part of the like atmosphere of it,
Right.
And so like he has the I'm the devil, and he's like, no, it was way stupider than that.
Yeah.
And the Manson family gets treated with the absolute respect they deserve.
Right, which
Right.
is zero.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Right.
Yeah, that was cool. The way that they demythologized a lot of stuff was very effective. like, yeah, like, I don't know, it's weird. Like, in principle, I like the idea of the ending. It just felt like after being such a slow burn, it rushed to that
Yeah.
really quickly, and like I would have liked another like 15-20 minutes for
Yeah.
maybe like the themes to coalesce in a way that
Yeah.
felt meaningful.
It's very much a heel turn moment. Mm-hmm. And you know what's funny is I was watching the whole movie, and I'm like, man, this is the most laid back, low key Quentin Tarantino movie I've ever seen.
Right.
Like, there's been barely any violence, just that one part, and then it's like fucking people are on fire and shit, and I was
Yeah.
like, dogs eating balls, and I was like, oh, never mind,
Yeah.
here he is. Here's
Yeah.
Quentin Tarantino, we know.
Yeah, I mean, well, but like the specter of the Manson family murders had like hanging over
Yeah.
all of it. Like, we knew it had to go. Like, this movie was not going to end pleasantly,
Right.
no
Yeah.
matter
For
what.
somebody.
Yeah.
And you know that
sure.
that gave the movie a lot of suspense for me.
Oh yeah.
Knowing
The
that
whole sequence at the ranch is like the most
God.
tense I've been.
Yeah.
in a while.
Oh, and there's like, I don't know, that there's two ways to feel about all that stuff. Like, I've seen a lot of people we know on Facebook, like Mike L,
Yeah.
saying a lot of how like a movie that does not work without external knowledge about what happened seems sort of like weird because it can't exist on its own. You have to
Right.
like know other stuff. But on the other hand, like that scene at the ranch,
Yeah.
I really, really loved the way that he exploited your knowledge of what these people are eventually going to do to really change the scene. Because like, there's nothing in the context of that scene should actually be suspenseful.
Well, I
It
mean, they're
shouldn't
watching
feel that
it.
creepy.
Like, there's this dread.
Yeah,
look,
but,
it
like,
seems
we-
pretty creepy.
there's-
I think,
like, there's-
even if you didn't know.
Yeah, but like, I don't like you. I don't think that you'd have any reason to think that the old dude in the house was dead or like for. It gets to
Yeah.
the point, but
Yeah,
it's like
it was a way, like when it builds
Yeah.
and builds
Yeah.
and builds.
and then that it doesn't pay off, that it's like a
And then
false
and
alarm.
then you're like, oh.
it's total. And then you're like, oh wait, yeah, that was only suspenseful because I know what these people will do, and like that was a really interesting.
You're waiting for that moment.
It adds
of-
Yeah.
a layer of dread, like a layer
Yeah.
of, these people are bad. You know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought it used that like sort
Yeah.
Yeah.
of the audience's future knowledge in an interesting way.
And I think even if you don't know that much about the Manson murders, it's still a tense movie.
Yeah.
Like, just watching it, there's this, like, atmosphere of... We talk about decay in this movie. The Spawn Ranch is, like, the decaying memory of Rick Dalton's career. Mm-hmm. And in that
Yeah.
way. So there's this, like, kind of, like, passing of an era, changing of hands. And there's this dread, because Cliff and Rick are terrified. Everybody's kind of on edge. We're like 1969. We're like in the heat of the Vietnam War, so there is this kind of like paranoia and fear running throughout the whole movie.
So what do you guys think of the Bruce Lee scene?
I took it as a bit of fantasy. It was like Cliff hyping himself up.
Yeah.
It was like, because we see Bruce Lee twice in the movie. We see him in the scene where he fights Cliff, and then we see him again where he's training Sharon Tate, and he's way nicer and way more
Yeah.
pleasant. So I took it as it was just Cliff just having a dick measuring contest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I took that scene as, again, like they're trying to show what kind of guy Cliff is, and he's the type of guy who is gonna challenge Bruce Lee. And I don't think that he beat the shit out of BruceLee.
No, it was a
He
tie. It
threw
was
him into a
explicitly
car,
tie.
and the
It's not a
fucking
fair
guy
fight.
got up and was fine. He
Yeah.
did not kick anyone's ass. That was like,
it was
Yeah.
just Cliff being a
Yeah.
dick deliberately.
And
Like,
Bruce Lee
fuck with this
theoretically could have beat his ass had the fight gone on longer,
Yeah.
but it got
Yeah.
interrupted.
I read an interview with the actor who played him, Mike Moe, and he said I internalized this and thought like, very, intently about playing this and thinking like, am I gonna make Bruce Lee look bad? And he was like, I know in my heart that if that fight had not gotten broken up, he would have killed that guy.
And I think Quentin knows that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Oh
mean-
yeah, totally.
It felt very
Totally.
affectionate. It felt like, an affectionate, but definitely tongue-in-cheek and over-the-top homage to an
Yeah.
artist he really likes. Like, I definitely took it as like, well, how do you show that your character is like really badass and can like do all this stuff in
Yeah.
a fight?
Yeah.
You have him like at least tie one of the most famously good fighters in Hollywood, and I think that whole thing is really the controversy over that scene is really overblown because, like,
Yeah.
by all
Well, his
accounts,
daughter was upset, right?
his daughter was upset, but it's I don't.
But
by
I think,
all
I think
accounts,
that
Bruce Lee kind of
her opinion is valid.
Of
Yeah, of
course.
But
course.
I think, she has an entirely different perception of Bruce Lee. That's her dad. Like,
Yeah.
you would be very sensitive to any portrayal of your dad, especially if he's deceased, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like where she's coming from 100% makes sense to me, like how she feels.
Yeah, absolutely. But on the other hand, by most accounts, Bruce Lee would kind of showboat, and he would be very
Right.
didactic and wax philosophical, and we see that in interviews with him, like that, like Be the Water
Yeah.
interview. Like, he can be very didactic, and I don't know, I didn't think he seemed like a dick. He just
No.
seemed like he's just like holding forth, like
Yeah.
teaching the philosophy of fighting, which
Yeah.
by all accounts is something that he did.
Right.
It was just a scene
Yeah.
of dudes being dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, showing that he's like kind of arrogant or whatnot on a movie set when he's, a rising movie star. I don't think that's
Yeah.
terrible or anything.
It's just a funny little bit of like lampshading.
Yeah, I do get what his daughter
Oh,
is
of
saying,
course.
but
Yeah.
I can see her problem with it for sure, but I certainly I would not call that scene racist.
And they show they show Bruce Lee training Sharon Tate later as like a counterpoint to, like, he's not always this he's not always the actor Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
Sometimes he's
He's
just
the stuntman.
he's the martial artist Bruce Lee, and he's helping her with her moves, like, with the with his philosophy that he put forth his entire life, like he was all about counterculture too. Like, he was all about, I don't want to be roped into one fighting style. I want to use all the best bits from every fighting style and make my own. Like, that's how he was. And I feel like he, like you said, he would be waxing, philosophical about stuff because that's what he did all the time. And B, he would be a little cocky, some, white stuntman coming up in his grill.
Yeah.
Like, he'd be like, oh yeah, bring it on, fucking Bruce Lee, Like, I don't know. I just feel like people kind of latched onto that. And that was another thing I saw people getting mad about that hadn't even seen the movie. I'm like, dude, you guys don't even see it in context anyway. And
Yeah.
yeah.
and I've never seen you say anything about Bruce Lee any other time ever, and all of a sudden now you care about, like, how he's portrayed. Like, just, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, a little bit of trivia about that scene too. I just read that Burt Reynolds wrote the line where he says where Bruce Lee says to Cliff, "You're pretty for a stuntman."
Yeah.
He said, I guess he was supposed to play.
He was supposed to play Spawn.
and then he died.
Yeah.
But he read the script and he saw that, or I guess Quentin told him, Brad Pitt's playing the stuntman, and he's like, you gotta have him someone tell him. He's too
Yeah.
pretty to be a stuntman.
I must say, Brad Pitt was looking pretty delicious.
He
He did
looking
look
good.
good. He took his shirt off too.
Yeah, I was like,
Man. He's aging into Robert Redford.
yeah, he's
You know,
looking
yeah.
really good.
He is.
Well, he
It's amazing.
didn't he play the young version of him in
Yeah.
what movie? River Runs Through It? No. Was it that one?
Oh, I don't know.
I
have
don't
to
know
look it
either.
up.
Yeah.
I kind of know what you're talking about, but
Yeah,
it's not a movie
remember.
I've seen. So.
This is like forever ago.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
look that up. But Leo looks good too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't kick him out of bed for eating crackers, as they say.
I didn't crush on him back in the day when he was the heartthrob.
Yeah.
I didn't get it, but I think he's definitely like aging.
Yeah.
Very well. Like
getting-
the older he gets, the cuter he is to
Yeah.
me.
I think it's also because we're getting older. I don't know. Like, I'm starting to like older men, and I'm like, ooh, what's happening? Like all these like
Who's that hot old guy?
daddy guys with like gray hair and temples. I'm like, Anyway,
Anyway,
thirst
Thirst
part
post.
thirst part of the podcast is over. Thirsty Tuesday.
Thirsty Tuesdays.
So okay, what do you guys think about how Sharon Tate was portrayed?
So I have an analogy that I don't know. Like, you guys know Twin Peaks?
Yes.
yes.
So I think Sharon Tate to Tarantino is Laura Palmer to David Lynch.
Oh.
I think there's that level of affection. And
Yeah.
part of what I really enjoyed about this movie is that we have all the segments we see of Sharon Tate are kind of brightly lit, like kind of angelic. There's like a hue of really bright light. And when she's in the movie theater, we see the actual Sharon Tate.
Yes.
Because most
Yeah.
people's assumption of Sharon Tate is not, oh, she was in the Wrecking Crew. It's she was this pregnant lady who got murdered and they wrote pig on the wall in her blood.
Mm-hmm.
So it was nice to see her as like an actual human being.
Yes.
Yes.
And that was something that I really appreciated about the movie.
Yeah, I really liked that also, and I thought, with her not having dialogue for a while, I thought the film did an interesting sort of 180 with her, where, like, the first bunch of the movie, we see her as, like, the myth of Sharon Tate, is, like, very shaped by, like, our future knowledge, and also we see her sort of through Rick's eyes, where, he sees her as everything
Like
that
glances.
he's not. Like, he sees in her, like, okay, she has potential and star power, and she's going to go on and have this great career, and so we see her as this sort of, like, idealized vision of the movie star, and then, like, she sort of gets demythologized, where, like, all the scenes with her are, like, really over the top, like, there's a lot of music, like you said, very brightly lit, very stylized, and then, like, the movie theater scene, it sort of just, like, very quickly brings her down to reality, where it's like, no, she still has insecurities, and people don't recognize her, and she has to talk her way into this movie theater. They don't believe that she's really, like, she's still human, she still has these same issues, and probably she looks at Rick and sort of has the same thought process, like, oh, like, that's this movie star, and, like, I'm like, they both sort of have different imposter syndrome that the other one sets off.
Yeah.
And at the end of the movie, and maybe, Quentin Tarantino thinks this too, the two converge and seem like they're going to be working together, right?
Yeah.
So, like, it's, like, optimistic. Like, he's not, it's not a downer ending where he's saying there was a decline and then the new people that came up weren't as good. He's saying, no,
they could have went hand in hand.
They went hand in hand. Like, it's okay to mourn the end of an era, but it's also okay to be optimistic for the beginning of a new era. And they kind of, like, the two narratives converge into the end and then become one.
Well, I thought that was also reinforced with the scene with Leo and the little girl. She was, like, encouraging him, like, it's gonna be okay. He tells the story of the cowboy who falls off the horse,
Right?
And he's reading that book. And throughout that whole movie, Cliff and him are the cowboy who fell off the horse.
Yeah.
And then they save the day. They stop a horrible murder. And then, like, at the end, they're kind of accepted into this new Hollywood world. And like, we see they're pulling away and they're talking and it's joyful. And there's this music that's kind of haunting.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, but there's, like, when you hear it, it's like, oh, it's a happy ending, but it's bittersweet for us because we know that never happened.
Yeah.
And I also really like the idea of Cliff Booth being a stuntman, not only in movies, but in real life. He took a hit for Sharon Tate. Like, he actually, like, that's his job, is,
He
like,
got stabbed in the side.
takes the abuse instead of the star. So he took the abuse that Sharon Tate was going to get. And, like, he was the ultimate stuntman, I guess. I like that little, I don't know if that was on purpose, but
That was 100%. Because he talks
It had
about,
to
I
be.
took a note of this on one of my figs, where it was like Easy Breezy is the most kind of badass cowboy. That's the character he was talking about. And Cliff Booth is Easy Breezy. He takes it in the side to protect everybody else.
Yeah.
Like, even the same, like, he's like, his knee got busted, and that's right where he gets stabbed.
Oh, like a little Jesus thing, right? He got stabbed in the side, too.
That's right.
Ah, it's
You
all
know,
back
I
to
want to say
Jesus.
one more thing too about the, like, did he or didn't he murder his wife? I think that Quentin Tarantino kind of gave us a little bit of a gift in that, because we can just talk about that till the end of time.
Yeah.
And
it's like this movie's briefcase from Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, and it's like, there are these weird Hollywood, things where it's like the Robert Wagner thing, where it's like, we know this happened and it's horrible and it was kind of hidden for all these years. But then there's all these, like, really overblown weird rumors that just kind of get overblown about people, and people become larger than life and legends, and there's that too.
Yeah.
So it could go either way, I think.
Well, I mean, we talk about legends. This movie is, like, pretty much inspired by, like, Burt Reynolds and his stuntman. Like, even to the point where if the episode of FBI that Cliff is on if you go look up that episode and that character, it's Burt Reynolds playing him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, someone posted that the other day, and that just kind of blew my mind. And there's also this
Interesting.
video where it's DiCaprio and Tarantino talking, although it's mostly Tarantino talking.
Well,
And it's notes about a scene, and they're talking about how he was inspired by like specific actors. There was this guy, Pete Dool, who was this Western cowboy guy who suffered from mental illness and had the same kind of episodes that Rick Dalton has. And so that added another layer to me. Like, I didn't know that Rick Dalton was supposed to be bipolar. And he flat out, he said that in the interview. They don't say it in the movie.
Yeah.
That
just
it
adds
makes
a
a lot of
little-
sense, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I like that show, not tell.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, but if none of us picked up on that, did they really show it though?
Oh,
Like, I don't know.
Yes,
That's,
they did. I mean,
I felt like he
I
had
did.
a little bit of
There was a
something going
depressive
on.
episode.
you don't. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I kind of think that
definitely didn't think bipolar,
movies
though.
that
Yeah.
just kind of tell you what you're supposed to think. I'm really bored by that.
Well,
So
yeah, no, I
I
mean,
like
like-
to think about like the way someone's behaving and kind of like I don't need to know he's bipolar. It's like I'm getting to know an actual person and I'm seeing the way they're behaving, and I'm not a psychologist. I'm not gonna talk to someone and get to know them and go, well, you're bipolar because you're acting
Yeah.
all these ways. I'm just gonna be like, oh wow, he's really emotional.
I
Yeah.
thought he was just
You know?
depressed and alcoholic.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah,
think-
yeah,
yes.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that
think
that's
it's-
stuff I picked up on.
But
It's like a
like-
depressive
But
episode. is
but
what
to
I'm talking
Leo,
about.
to Leo as an actor, he needs to know that guy's bipolar, so he
For
can
sure.
play this.
And
person.
that was kind of like
There's
when
just
I
stuff
heard that, I
that
was like,
we don't
okay,
need to
that
know.
kind of makes
Yeah.
sense with the way he carries himself, and the whole scene in the
Yeah.
trailer, his whole meltdown where he's like,
And that was before really
whiskey
you
sours.
could
Yeah.
get good diagnose, be diagnosed
Yeah,
for
yeah.
things in a
Absolutely.
way
Yeah.
to help you. Like back then, you just drank or
Yeah.
whatever,
Right.
Yeah.
just self-medicated,
Mhm.
But I really enjoyed also the contrast between the different styles of acting that were going on because Rick was from the era where like the actor didn't really disappear into the role, right? Like if John Wayne played a character, he was always John Wayne,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then just that character's name, and it was always like John Wayne as this little type, like this guy in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dalton is Jake Cahill
Yeah.
and Bounty Law.
Like they were always playing themselves in the movie, right? They were always playing their real persona, and then like the little girls method acting.
yeah.
So and there was this transition between that kind of like stagey kind of like 50s and 60s acting over to like the counterculture, which was more realistic, new wave type of stuff, And I just really liked, that interplay between him and the little girl, and she's
Yeah.
like saying all this method acting stuff, and it's like blowing his fucking dome.
Yeah.
And she's so like well spoken and so
Yeah.
charismatic. That little girl, I was like, what? She was so sassy.
I
and
know,
love
just-
that. She's one of my
she
favorite
held her
parts in the
own
movie.
with like one of the biggest movie stars, and she like totally owned the scene,
I
which is
know.
like an interesting because like that's what she's doing in the movie and outside the movie. It's
Yeah.
like two layers of that like going on. I don't know. I just was like super into it. I was like, man, that's such a
Yeah.
a little layer of a thing, like just different styles of acting and how they're
Yeah.
clashing. I also really enjoyed them talking briefly about, Rick doing Italian movies. And I love that they slipped in a little thing about, and this is a true thing, is like when they filmed Italian films, they would just all speak in their own language. And then like they would just dub them over, like they wouldn't record sound. And
Yeah.
like that's such a little like nerd piece of
That's a
info.
Tarantino
totally.
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I was like, they did do that in Italian movies, like
Yeah.
like they just overdubbed everybody, and I just thought it was a cute little,
I just like the way he said
Film
I
nerd.
Italian.
Italian.
I Italian. Not gonna be in an Italian movie.
I don't know if anyone picked up that two different characters say two different disparaging things about two different redheaded women in the movie.
Oh, I didn't pick that up.
Yeah, no one
me
talked
neither.
about that, but I noticed it, and I went, did a redhead hurt you, Quentin? What happened?
Can we just
She
talk
wouldn't,
about
she wouldn't show her
the
feet.
egregious?
Yeah,
She wouldn't show her feet to him. Damn redheads covering her feet up. Dude, the feet were out
Quinn's like-
of fucking control in this
I
movie.
didn't think they were that bad.
There was a
There's
lot-
2 feet.
No, there was feet on this. Like he would have shots framed with
Right
fucking
on
feet, like on the
Yeah.
sides, like you know how you go like
Yeah.
like a guy goes
Extreme close up
like
of
this, like
a
with
foot.
a cam, like like oh I gotta get the frame the shot. It was
Gotta
like this, but
rack
there were
focus.
feet.
Going to the ranch when he goes when they first show inside the cabin at the ranch.
Oh yeah, when they
Yeah.
go to there's like so
Yeah.
many feet,
I didn't notice.
and he's got girls
I
prisoner.
was like, "Where's all the feet everyone's talking
it was
about?"
really obvious.
there was
yeah.
so much feet.
You know what? I think that about all Quentin Tarantino movies. Someone said he's got a foot fetish, and I was
Wiggle
like,
your
Oh,
big
yeah.
toe.
"What?"
Yeah.
It was like around Death Proof time. I was like, "What are they talking about?" And I was like,
No, he totally does.
"Okay,
this
I
movie
guess
was
there's
real
feet in this
blatant.
movie." I mean,
There's
I
that
don't
girl,
know.
Pussycat.
didn't-
She had her feet all up on the
I
windshield.
see, like I noticed that, and I
Yeah.
noticed Sharon Tate with her feet up,
Which
but
had a
like
movie.
because someone said it. If no one said anything
Yeah.
about Tarantino and feet, I never would have noticed.
Yeah.
I noticed a lot of footwear.
I
in
just
this
want
movie.
that poster. Someone
This is
posted.
a bunch of feet.
It's just the feet. I thought that was amazing.
When this comes out on Blu-ray, my boyfriend hasn't seen it yet, and he's not like super into watch movies in the theater. Like, I'm gonna make him watch it, and we're gonna have a drinking game, and I'm gonna take shots every time there's feet. I just
You
want to
will
see if
be
there's.
You might die.
wasted.
Alcohol poisoning.
I might die.
I don't know. Maybe I like feet just as much as Quentin Tarantino. So I
Just subconsciously stirring something in you.
Let's get
yeah,
some- let's
I'm
get
like
some
I don't know. I
male
really like this movie.
Commenters, what do you think about feet?
Email us at moviesleuth.com about your comments about feet.
Just at Chris.
Man, we should have did this
You can,
podcast.
you can
barefoot.
send me pictures of your feet if you want. I don't care.
Please slide in my
In
DMs.
or out of socks.
If you want. You can
At
send her
shoes?
pictures of the feet you're gonna send me too. So. All right. So, anybody else have anything they want to talk about with the film?
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there was anything else that I had. I don't know. I
look at my
mean, mainly
notes.
just I'm interested to see now that it is rumored that there's going to be an extended cut as a miniseries on
Yeah.
Netflix.
Yes.
Because it was just, my thing with this movie was it was a fantastic first two acts and then a third act that felt oddly half-assed for most of it to me. Like, it felt like a lot of themes that just kind of crumbled. Like, even his midlife crisis arc, that like Leo's arc is so good in the first two acts, and like his struggle with like depression and alcoholism and relevance and this like midlife crisis and trying to figure his stuff out, and then it just sort of drops off a lot. Like what you guys said about him kind of like, you know, meeting up with the Sharon Tate and this like, oh, it was like old school, new school Hollywood meeting. It's like, okay, I can kind of see that, but there's a lot felt underbaked to me about the last act, because it was weird. Like, I went into it with very little preconceived notions, because I'm very hot and cold with Tarantino. Love his first four, and then after that, like, I don't know.
This is a pretty self-indulgent even for Tarantino. This
Yeah,
film,
but like
I would say.
not in a way that bothered me for most of it. Like, if the whole movie had just been this like laid back, like kind of long-winded slice of life, I would have been totally fine with that. Like, 2 hours in, after like there's that trifecta, the movie's three best scenes all happen at the same time. Rick on the movie set learning method acting from the little girl and then giving his amazing performance. And Cliff and the Hitchhiker and the Spawn Ranch and Sharon Tate in the movie theater. And after that, I was like, damn, this movie is amazing. I am in love with this movie. And then very few movies have like, oh, I'm gonna love this movie. And then the last act just makes me like real disappointed.
Yeah, I
And this
wonder
was
if-
one of those. And it's like,
How
not
much
that
longer is it going to be on Netflix?
They said
I
it's
don't
a 4-hour cut, apparently.
So
the
maybe
rumor.
they'll add some stuff
God.
in that might flesh that
that-
part out.
Well, there's stuff.
Yeah.
There's like things with Burt Reynolds. Someone's playing Burt Reynolds. I think it's.
Oh, wow.
And then there's a whole thing. Tim Roth was supposed
Yeah,
to be J.C.
he's-
Brings Butler.
He was in the credits, said Tim Roth cut, and I was like, okay, now
Yeah.
they need to. I would have sat in this
Yeah.
theater for another
Well,
20
the- I
minutes
I
for
recall a
that scene.
poster that had his face on it. That was
Oh, yeah.
when the movie first got announced. Like they had
Yeah.
all the little circles of their faces, and Tim Roth was on
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, so it was probably a relatively like late cut in the edit before Con or something
Yeah.
like that.
Well, he almost didn't show it at the festival, right? Because he said it wasn't done.
It wasn't
Yeah.
done yet, yeah. So I don't like. There's nothing about the it's not nothing in principle about the last act bothers me. Like I get what he was trying to do, I think, and I like the idea of it. I just think that he just sort of bungled the execution on the last act, which I found doubly disappointing because I thought the first 2 acts were like really good. Like it almost bothered me in a way that like I kind of hate Death Proof. I really don't like that movie. But like this one almost bothered me more because it was like fantastic until it kind of let down its potential.
Yeah.
The last, the ending, well, I don't even want to say the ending, but the last act is, it almost feels like it's from another movie. It's very stylized.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
like,
it turns kind of true crime.
yeah, it feels a little too modern in the execution when compared to the rest of the film. I don't think it's bad. I just think it's such a tone change and style change.
Yeah.
And it's out of nowhere. Like, it just, I feel like if you were feeling this one way about the movie in the beginning, because the first 2 acts of the movie are 100% different than the last act.
Yeah.
I understand that completely.
Yeah.
It just depends on like you said, how much does it retroactively affect like the way you feel about the first part of the film.
Yeah.
It would have been fine if it hadn't felt like all the movie's themes and character arcs just like hard dropped and just like stopped happening.
Yeah.
And it felt like there was no additional character growth after the time jump. And I don't know, it felt weirdly to me like he wrote him like there was stuff cut, or like he wrote himself into a corner and was like, I don't really know where to take this from here. Okay, I'm just gonna write something completely different and jam them together. And like that all of a sudden everything is real heavily VO'd when there's one line of VO in the first 2 hours of the movie.
Yeah.
That did seem weird and out of place
so,
to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. It felt really weird, and like that was where it felt like okay, he's like cobbing something together here in the script. Like
Maybe-
this is
Maybe the voiceover is like covering up cuts or something, like the information that he would have conveyed.
Yeah.
Like, because I felt weird too. Because then I remember I saw Chris and I was like, "Who's the narrator?" And he was like,
It's Randy.
"It's
The stunt guy.
Kurt Russell."
Yeah.
But
Russell.
I just didn't. I don't know why it would be him.
Yeah.
I guess I just
Yeah.
was confused as to like why is he narrating it.
Yeah, I'm gonna be really interested to see the director's cut, because this is a movie that I feel like none of my problems with it couldn't be solved by more scenes being there that address the problems I have with the writing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I can't say I've seen many movies that are very long but still feel too short for what they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
But this was one of them.
Yeah. I would have loved to hang out
Yeah.
in the world of this movie.
Yeah.
Oh God.
For
Yeah.
however long.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
super into a longer cut. And is
Me too.
he like have some kind of deal with Netflix or something? Because
Well,
they
'cause he
did that
it
with
for,
Hateful Eight.
Yeah. And the Hateful Eight on Netflix is like I think it's the Roadshow version, because I
Is it
saw
the
the
Roadshow?
Roadshow version, but there's different stuff in it.
Yeah, because I saw the
I should
Roadshow
watch
version, but I didn't watch the Netflix one, so I didn't compare.
It's interesting.
I want that on Blu-ray. Why is it on stupid Netflix? I don't want it on there.
Well,
Gotta yell at
keep an
Lionsgate.
eye out for screeners in awards season.
Oh yeah.
Gotta yell at Lionsgate.
Oh
Yeah, well, again, like I was saying before about Dust Devil, Lionsgate is terrible, and I'm so bitter that they own the Miramax library.
Lionsgate owns Hateful Eight.
Well,
And almost every Tarantino
Yes.
that's not
Oh.
Inglourious Bastards. That's
Yeah.
the
I
only
just don't
one.
understand why they wouldn't release it. Like, why is it's already done? Just I don't get what the holdup is.
It's the same
there's
thing
a
with the
lot
Kill
of
Bill and the
director's
whole
cuts
bloody
that
affair.
exist that they won't release.
Just put it on disc. It's not hard.
They don't care about their archive titles. Like, they just don't. It's weird.
Bullshit.
I know. Maybe someday.
Well, does anybody else have anything to add?
I want to see like a whole episode of Bounty Law.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet
that would
you
be
he
cool.
filmed one. I bet you.
I
he
bet
did.
you they
Sure.
did too, because it was just too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's like how on the Blu-ray of Matinee, the entire Mant movie is on there.
Is
as
it
a
really?
special-
That's
Yep.
so cool.
So I bet you're right that he shot that.
For sure.
I
He
bet it'll
has,
be on the
like-
Blu-ray.
He has like pages and pages of scripts of episodes for that show.
I always thought
what
I thought it was
he
kind of funny during that part too. It was like we were watching somebody give DVD commentary because because like Rick Dalton's like, oh, that guy was a jerk. I didn't like
guy's
working
a-
with him. It's like talking over like all the stuff, giving like little extra
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
Oh, you know who I think was underused too is Al Pacino.
I love Al Pacino.
I'm so glad you brought him up. For as over-the-top as Tarantino is, he got a restrained
sure
performance
did.
out of for the first time since like before Heat. We saw '80s Al Pacino again.
Yeah.
It
The
was
loudest,
Yeah.
the loudest thing about him was his glasses.
Yeah.
in his
That
scene.
was awesome. He was wonderful.
He was. When he showed up, I was just like giggling and like shaking like the whole time. And Mike was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I love Al Pacino." I was just so excited.
yeah.
It was really interesting to me. Like, I was just thinking about when I was watching. Like, man, back in the day, you had to like literally have like 16 millimeters and stuff like to watch movies at home. Like, you couldn't just
Oh, yeah.
watch a movie at home. Like,
Yep.
you had to like go get the reels and have all that equipment and then like borrow them and bring them back and just. Wow, that's
Yeah.
a lot of work. I'm glad I
Yeah.
don't do that anymore.
You had to be rich to watch a movie
Yeah, you
at
had to
home.
be rich. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see that I saw somebody posted a picture. It was like a screenshot of Al Pacino in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He was like miming shooting a gun,
Yeah.
and he was in the exact same position he was in Scarface.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Like, it was just like a little homage
Yeah.
to that.
I thought that too. I was like, this is reminding me of something.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to him in Grumpy Old Mobsters.
All right. Does anybody else have anything to add?
I do have one last thing.
All right.
So, I was watching this movie, and this kind of reminded me of Roma, and how it's a really personal film for both of those directors.
Yeah.
Roma is like Alfonso Cuarón's most personal film. Like,
Yeah.
you see little elements of his history. There's even like shots in the movie where you can go, oh, that was in Gravity, or that was in Children
Yeah.
of Men. And the same thing kind of happens in this movie, where you feel like you're in Quentin Tarantino's childhood. Mm-hmm. Like, you just see all the advertising, and he said something like the car that Brad Pitt drives is the same one his stepdad had.
Oh,
When he was 6
wow.
years
wow.
old driving around. And I just thought that was so, like, it's such an odd thing that he took this movie about the Manson murders and about a failed Western, and yet it feels like failed Western actor, and it feels so personal to him.
I think we're just getting to a lot of point with a lot of these, directors where they're getting older and we're getting these like self-reflective pieces and works out of them now. Like directors we grew up with, and now we're starting to see like they kind of make movies about making their movies and about how they're feeling about their life. I really enjoy that kind of like that wind down of, I feel like Tarantino's going to have a good wind down and end.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
directors I think make movies past their prime and they're just bad.
Yeah.
And I feel like he's made, 9, whatever, people think of like all 9 of them. I think he's made 9 pretty dang solid movies.
It's a
which a lot of,
solid body of work.
yeah,
Yeah.
like a lot of directors can't say that.
They can't even do one good movie.
Yeah,
Right.
so
Yeah.
I feel like, as much controversy as he garners, like he's such a part of our cultural conversation, and like if you say Tarantino, it automatically like clicks in somebody's head as style.
Yeah.
Like, so I just liked, like you said, that's a cool idea. I like that. It's like like he's kind of reflecting on his own body of work as well, and his life as a director and what he grew up with, and realizing that he's coming to the end of his career as well. So
It feels like a living memory. Like
Yeah.
it's like the lights, there's the whole sequence at the end, towards the end when they're going to the restaurants, and you see all the lights on, like you see the lights at the Cinerama Dome, you see the Taco
Yeah.
Bell, you see all that.
Yeah, I
And
really
it-
liked all that stuff.
I
that
did too.
sense of
It was
place.
so cool.
It
Yeah.
feels so real. Like, any other fililmmaker would be like, oh, let's just, just throw a chroma key on it, and
Yeah.
just throw something in. But he went and made these things, and the practicality and how
Yeah.
lived in it feels is part of why it works so well.
I agree.
hasn't he tried to like preserve old like neon signs and stuff? Isn't
Yeah.
that something he does like as
Yeah.
a hobby?
Yeah.
I think I read that somewhere. So like he's very into iconography and preserving visual reminders of times past and keeping them for future generations.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So did
All
everyone?
right, so I think we're
Yeah.
gonna
Oh,
getting
one
short
more
on
thing.
time.
Did everyone catch the like end scene after the credits?
Yeah,
That
with
was
the apple cigarettes.
Yeah, I loved
Yeah.
that.
That was
That
funny.
was beautiful.
It was perfect capper.
It sure was.
Well, all right.
Perfect decapper.
Yes. So I think we've ran out of our time. I think we've deconstructed this movie down to the bone.
I gotta see it again.
Down to
Yeah.
the feet.
So I hope you guys send us some feet pictures to our email account. Just send them to Chris. He likes feet.
He really likes
Moccasin pictures, please.
Chris
Lots
George
of
at the moviesleuth.com.
.com.
Chris, yep.
Lots of.
I
Send
did
them
notice
feet.
there were a lot of close-ups on Brad Pitt's moccasins.
Yeah,
They
and his
look
abs.
comfy.
And his abs too.
Yeah, there was that one.
That's true.
All right, so I think we're done. See you guys next time.
Goodbye.
Good night.
Visit us at www.themoviesleuth.com and find The Movie Sleuth on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and iTunes.